Actually, it's off stream. It's kind of lame. Yeah, it's kind of lame. I said to do. I'll do some other time. It's kind of dumb. Unless I missed it, I don't know.
11 Alive's channel and TMZ. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. On January 7th, 2022, Black Panther director Ryan Coogler stopped at a
Guys, I saw the video on whoever uploaded it first.
Bank of America branch located in Atlanta, Georgia to withdraw $12,000 in cash. In an attempt to be discreet, Mr. Coogler passed a note to the teller that read, "I would like to withdraw $12,000 cash from my checking account. Please do the money count somewhere else. I'd like to be discreet." Mr. Coogler also provided his ID and ATM card, and correctly entered the PIN for his account. Despite this, the teller was worried by the interaction, and after discussing the situation with her manager, called 911.
My passed me a note. Yeah, so I just told my manager I didn't feel comfortable, so he told me to call police while he, I guess, stalled for
What
a
is
minute.
what is on the note, ma'am?
It just says I want to withdraw $12,000.
I think it's very difficult for me to. Isn't this what I was just thinking? This is just fucking brain dead. It's like legitimately just zero IQ. Like legitimately, you just can't put a fucking thought together somehow. Oh guys, this guy's his ID and his bank account, and oh wow, he has funds. He has a lot of it. He has enough to withdraw the amounts, but he wants me to withdraw the amounts that he has. I think I'm gonna go ahead and call the police. What?
Just be discreet.
Is this an actual customer, or are they trying to rob the bank?
They had a debit card and he inserted it. He gave me a California ID, but I was like, "How do you want the cash back?" And he's like, "Just look at the note."
And he had no weapons, correct?
Not that I know of. He just has on black sunshades, a black hat.
Is he a black male, white male?
He's a black male. And every time I ask him like a question, he's like, "Look at the note." But he inserted his debit card, and then I asked for his ID. He handed me his ID as a California ID. But I didn't look at his name because I'm just like so shook up. Like, I don't know.
Holy shit, 2 years XQC.
This is so
So I just told
dumb.
him, "Give me one moment. You know, I have to get my manager."
Okay, so none of his information was even verified. Okay. He might just want to be discreet, but I have police en route.
Sergeant Fernandez and several other officers from the Atlanta Police Department responded to
Okay. Guys, I don't know a lot, okay? I know a decent amount about the police shit or whatever, okay? So, according to the call, what is the problem? So what is the problem that they're trying to tackle? See, the problem I have with this overall, yet, in this video, is that what is the issue being reported or that needs action? I don't know what the fuck is happening.
Sergeant Fernandez.
There literally isn't the problem. They can't even say. So why is the police being mobilized?
Hello, Mayor. I'm happy.
Okay, I'll replay that in a minute, bro. I don't get it.
And several other officers from the Atlanta Police Department responded to the call. While Mr. Coogler was waiting in the bank lobby, an officer approached him, placed him in handcuffs, and led him to the back of a police cruiser.
Hey, dude, so just hang tight right there. I'm gonna talk to you for.
Just one sec, bro.
Say what?
Just one sec. Can somebody take my glasses off my face?
Take your glasses
panic
off?
attack, bro.
I got you.
This is drug money. I don't even understand. This guy's like a movie director or something like that. I don't think this guy is like drug money, you fucking clown.
You need some air?
I mean, I gotta be honest with you, man. I just can't believe this, man. Is that my family's baby nurse? Did y'all have her detained right now?
Who?
The baby nurse, the Filipino woman that was in the back seat. Did y'all have her detained right now?
Yes, she's being detained.
All right. Can you, did the officers explain what's going on while we're out here?
Not really, man.
All right, so we got a call based.
I heard somebody ask if I passed a note.
Yeah.
It's probably been one of these.
So basically, we got a call, and from what we got the call, it seems like someone was trying to rob the bank. Something about you passing a note to the teller.
He said what?
Or something to that effect. Can you just tell me what's going on? Or?
Sergeant Fernandez explains that Mr. Kugler was detained based solely on the 911 call, which he claimed made it seem like he was trying to rob the bank because he passed a note to the teller. However, in her 911 call, the teller also explained that the note requested to discreetly withdraw $12,000, and that although Mr. Kugler had provided his debit card and ID, the teller did not even check to see if the name on the ID matched the name on the account. While the teller's allegations in full likely...
Yeah, I think what they want you to do, they want you to come in with your fucking 10K suit, and they want you to say, hey, I want 100K in bands in this duffel bag now. I would like to be robbed on my way out of the bank, dude. Thank you, man. Like,
would not
what
have
do
given
they
rise to
expect
the
is gonna
level of
happen? Like, I
reasonable
don't get it.
suspicion necessary to detain Mr. Kugler. A court would only consider the information known to the officers when determining whether officers had reasonable suspicion. In the infamous 1968 case of Terry versus Ohio, the Supreme Court held that when
Classic.
a court assesses whether reasonable suspicion exists, quote, it is imperative that the facts be judged against an objective standard. Would the facts available to the officer at the moment of the seizure or the search warrant a man of reasonable caution in the belief that the action taken was appropriate? Similarly, in the 1996 case of United States versus Michael, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which has jurisdiction over Georgia, explained that, quote, reasonable suspicion is determined from the totality of the circumstances and from the collective knowledge of the officers involved in the stop.
Nope. Okay. I'm gonna play the video. So this is that with the call given, okay, and when what they saw there, what that they have, okay, they couldn't fucking
This means that,
arrest
as the
them
Supreme
like that.
Court
That's
stated
fucking
in the
stupid as shit.
2014 case of Hine
No
versus
shot.
North Carolina, quote, a search or seizure may be permissible even though the
Fucking hell.
justification for the action includes a reasonable factual mistake. An officer might, for example, stop a motorist for traveling alone and...
Is detained? That is not being detained. You have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, how is he detained? He's in cuffs in the back of the cruiser. They can search him.
A high occupancy vehicle lane, only to discover upon approaching the car that two children are slumped over asleep in the back seat. The driver has not violated the law, but neither has the officer violated the Fourth Amendment. In Mr. Kugler's case, when evaluating if the reasonable suspicion standard was met, a court could only take into account the information that dispatch provided to the officers, and not the totality of the information provided in the 911 call. Although it is unclear what the officers were told, it seems from Sergeant Fernandez's summary that the officers were unaware of the contents of Mr. Kugler's note or the fact that he had provided ID and his ATM card. Therefore, it is possible that a court could conclude the officers had reasonable suspicion to detain Mr. Kugler on suspicion of bank robbery, depending on the details they'd received from dispatch.
It's a medical assistant that works in my house that prefers to be paid in cash.
Oh,
Every time
depending.
I make a withdrawal to pay her, you know, because it's a large amount, she works a lot.
Yeah.
If I don't write down on a note how much I went out, and then I don't want it ran through the money counter right there at the desk, the whole bank ends up looking at it because they just hearing money going through the through the account, and I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe getting money out like that. So every time I go to withdraw it, you know, I put the amount, the account I want to take it out of, and I put my own card in, and then they usually take me like always just get the money from me. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
I don't understand.
So you make well. That's like I said. That's the reason why we're out here, and that's the reason why we detained everybody, because we didn't know exactly what was going on. So you make
I
these.
gotta be honest with you, man. Y'all never asked me what was going on. So
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we in those situations. In a
situation.
situation.
Where's the ID? In this pocket?
In a.
Is the ID in this pocket?
I don't know why he's still in cuffs in the back of the cruiser though. Everybody fucking.
Sir, so the reason that we don't.
Officer, just give me a sec, man.
I got you. Go ahead.
Do you need to get some first aid? You need to take the mask off for a second to get some first aid?
How am I R-word? Are you dumb?
I got a 5-month-old baby at home, bro. I don't want to take my mask off, bro.
Yeah, I understand.
So I'm just trying to manage my emotions right now.
I understand.
You know what
I
I'm
understand. So, like I was about to tell you, the seriousness of the call doesn't allow us to.
Officer, let me ask you a question, sir.
Yes, sir.
You're talking to me right now, and I'm cuffed in the back of the car.
Yeah.
My team's driver's cuffed.
Yeah.
I imagine in the back of the car.
Yeah.
And my baby nurse that takes care of my baby is cuffed in the back of the car.
Yeah.
Is there any reason we can't have this conversation once you get these cuffs off everybody? And we,
Yeah.
And we back to being treated like standard members of
Yeah.
society?
How about you don't walk into a bank with sunglasses on it? How about you do? Like what? How about you do?
That's
Any
fine.
reason for that, bro?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll go ahead and get you out of the handcuffs. And
I'd let her have this
Bro, if the bank called the police and then somebody had glasses in a bank, motherfucker, dude, there would be a fucking PD inside the fucking bank, bro. What are you talking about, man?
I got you.
This is
I understand.
you know,
We just while they're getting you guys out of handcuffs.
I stated to the officers that arrested me that had their Glocks out.
Yeah,
That I was pulling money out of my own account.
I understand.
I put my own bank card in there before the lady went in the back. You know what I'm saying?
So we have to confirm that. You gotta understand. We don't come out because of the seriousness of the call. We don't just come out, and unfortunately, in a situation like that, you don't get the benefit of the doubt.
The
We detain
seriousness
and
of
then
the
we
call.
ask questions later.
I got a guy here.
That's
He's
what
withdrawing
exactly
money.
What I went inside for. You can
And he,
take the other people that are handcuffed.
He's writing down a note.
So
Damn, dude.
That's why we come
What if
out
he's
with weapons.
mute?
That's why you're detained, and then we ask questions later because of the nature of the call.
The officer explains that they immediately detained and handcuffed Mr. Kugler because of the serious nature of the call. Although the officers clearly did not have probable cause to make an arrest, in some situations, courts have found the use of handcuffs during a Terry stop to be reasonable. For instance, in the 1989 case of U.S. versus Hasta Morir, the 11th Circuit held that because, quote, police may take reasonable action based upon the circumstances to protect themselves during investigative detentions, the handcuffing in question, quote, constituted a Terry stop and was a reasonable action designed to provide for the safety of the agents. However, courts have long recognized that a Terry stop can ripen into a de facto arrest that must be supported by probable cause, with the use of handcuffs or other restraints on an individual's freedom of movement being a factor to be considered
That's
when
what I
deciding
said to
whether
chat,
a
the
detention
fucking-
constituted
That's
an arrest.
what I said,
In the
bitch
2007
ass.
case of U.S. versus Williams, the
No,
11th Circuit
actually, he's just being detained. Actually, yeah, then it transforms, man.
that, quote, to determine whether a stop became an arrest, we apply 4 non-exclusive factors: the law enforcement purposes served by the detention, the diligence with which the police pursued the investigation, the scope and intrusiveness of the detention, and the duration of the detention. The court explored the third factor of the test in more detail in the 2004 case of U.S. versus Acosta, stating that, quote, under the third factor, we ask whether the scope and intrusiveness of the detention exceeded the amount reasonably needed by police to ensure their personal safety. The Supreme Court has stated that officers may take reasonable steps to ensure their safety so long as they possess an articulable and objectively reasonable belief that the suspect is potentially dangerous. Based on this, the court concluded that, quote, an investigatory stop does not necessarily ripen into an arrest because an officer draws his weapon, handcuffs a suspect, orders a suspect to lie face down on the ground, or secures a suspect in the back of a patrol car. While restriction on freedom of movement is a factor to be taken into account in determining whether a person is under arrest, it alone is not sufficient to transform a Terry stop into a de facto arrest. As with the issue of reasonable suspicion, whether immediately detaining Mr. Kugler in handcuffs and placing him in the cruiser was reasonable depends on the information known to the officers at the time. If the officers were aware of all the facts the teller communicated in the 911 call, Mr. Kugler would have a strong argument that the immediate use of handcuffs before attempting to investigate the situation was unnecessary and unreasonable.
There's nothing for me to say, man. Like, I gotta get all y'all names.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah. Do you have anything?
I'm not reaching into nothing, grabbing nothing with y'all.
No,
So y'all can give me something to write down on, and y'all can put it down.
All right.
I ain't had guns drawn on me in a while, bro. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get my own money out of my own account. It's a major problem, man. And the officers that was arresting me, I was trying to communicate that with them. You know what I mean? Y'all reaching for my badge. I got my ID hanging on my hip.
I got you.
I gave him my bank card. You feel me?
Yeah.
Like
Do you understand where we're coming from?
Do you understand that we didn't just show up here and draw guns on you? We showed up because the call came in.
I understand.
Yeah.
That somebody up.
Yeah.
That's all I know. Right now, you know what I'm saying?
It just is when you're in chat, we typed,
You know what I'm saying?
you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
1,000 people here. You feel me? I'm trying to take care of some personal business. And I get 2 hammers from
Hey, y'all do me a favor and give it, write down all our names and put it on a paper form. Y'all do me a favor, just step
Here's
up.
the way you typed it.
I need everybody.
They're writing all our names down.
You know what I'm saying? And I just find out who made that call in there.
Yeah, you have all right to do so.
Yeah, I got.
But I just want you to understand what what my sergeant advised you
Have-
on the nature of the call. That's
Have you-
all I need you to understand.
Have you ever considered speaking to them before you make a transaction like that? Have you ever had something like this happen?
Have I ever been arrested?
No.
Have you ever considered speaking to them about what it is you're trying to do prior to doing?
So can I explain something to you, bro?
Yeah.
I'm not.
This
trying
didn't get it, is
to
he?
here, bro? Like, I'm not saying out loud how much money I'm taking.
That's what I'm
why
saying.
writing it down
I'm not
in the
talking
notes,
about speaking to somebody like that. I'm saying,
No,
hey, can I speak to a manager in an office somewhere? Have you ever considered doing something like that?
Consider it now that y'all I'm
Yeah.
not trying to take money out. But
I got
up to this point, at every Bank of America I ever gone to, never happened.
Gotcha.
You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
So y'all explaining y'all perspective, right?
Yeah.
Y'all the ones with guns and vests.
Mm-hmm.
What's my perspective?
I know you
At
tell.
the bank, she never said it was a bro.
Yeah.
I said, hey, is that gonna be okay with you? She said, yeah. I put my own card in, put my own pin in. She asked to see my ID. I gave it to her.
Yeah.
And she goes in the back, and I'm waiting for the and then the people.
I mean, he's
come out,
right.
they
I mean,
taking care of you. They taking
bro.
care of you. Everything's just taking a little while. Next thing I hear.
Look,
Yeah.
if the guy has an account and he withdraws an amount that is his and has a pin to it, and all the thing checks out, how is he there to rob the bank?
I hear Glocks getting pulled out. That's what I hear. I hear Glocks.
What
getting
is he
pulled
gonna
out
rob?
from my holster.
He's
Hey,
robbing
sir,
himself.
stop talking for me. So you see my perspective.
Yeah.
Mr. Kugler explains how, from his perspective, it was clear that he did not do anything wrong, and the officers did not personally observe any suspicious behavior on his part before arresting him. Despite this, courts have concluded that a tip from a 911 call alone can justify an investigative stop if it is sufficiently reliable and creates reasonable suspicion that criminal activity may be afoot. In the 2014 case of Navarrete versus California, the Supreme Court held that a 911 caller's report of being run off
You
the
know what I'm
roadway
saying?
created reasonable suspicion of drunk driving that allowed officers to conduct a traffic stop. In reaching this conclusion, the court rejected an argument that reasonable suspicion did not exist because, quote, the reported behavior might also be explained by, for example, a driver responding to an unruly child or other distraction, since, quote, reasonable suspicion need not rule out the possibility of innocent conduct. The court also determined that the absence of additional suspicious conduct after the vehicle was first spotted by an officer did not dispel the reasonable suspicion of drunk driving because, quote, an officer who already has such a reasonable suspicion need not surveil a vehicle at length in order to personally observe suspicious driving. However, it should be noted that a tip must do more than provide an accurate description of a suspect's location and appearance.
What
As
is
the
this-
Supreme
what
Court
is-
explained in the 2000 case of Florida versus JL, a
What-
tip
dude,
must,
what
quote,
is that
be
clip,
reliable
man?
in its assertion of illegality, not just in its tendency to identify a determinate person. In the 2019 case of United States versus Maddox, the Northern District of Alabama, which is part of the 11th Circuit, evaluated a case where officers responded to a phone call reporting that, quote, a suspicious male and female had approached the caller's car at an ATM machine at BBVA Compass Bank. The defendant argued that the stop was unjustified because the 911 tip alone was insufficient to create reasonable suspicion, partially because the caller did not report observing any illegal activity. Although the court decided the case on another issue and did not determine whether the 911 call alone was sufficient to establish
that's
reasonable
tough, though.
suspicion, it admitted that it was, quote, a close question. Here,
Yeah.
although the teller accurately described
it's a
Mr.
little,
Kugler's
little of a
appearance, she did not
squeeze.
report any illegal activity in her 911 call, as none of the behavior she described could be objectively construed as an attempt to rob the bank or commit any other crime. Therefore, it is certainly possible that a court could conclude that the call alone would be insufficient to establish reasonable suspicion if all of the facts were relayed to the responding officers.
Not how many officers you got on there?
It's not, man. I mean,
Yeah, there's 5 of us. out here.
Overall, it wasn't that big of a deal, I think.
Can you give him
Overall.
the case number regarding the accident? That way he's...
Yeah, it wasn't handled perfectly, but
no
I
one's
mean,
withholding anything. Wow. Do we have any more of their property? Give them...
I think it's unfair because the call was a shit because the lady is shit at her job and she's just a piece of garbage. Sorry.
all their property.
She's just garbage.
Can
She's
you
garbage.
give me a case number?
Y'all are withholding right now, right?
What are we withholding?
So I call Atlanta and I say, hey, Officer Fernandez, who's that?
Yeah, that would be me.
I got first initials on your name, right?
Yeah.
Why they not on here?
I'm going to give you a case number. That's why we're giving you the case number. Dude, calm down.
You telling me to calm down?
Yeah. Yes, I am. We're giving you a case number that identifies every single person that was out here. We've got cameras. Excuse me?
I don't know how case numbers work.
Okay.
Yeah, like
I got you.
I just know you got a very common last name.
Fernandez?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm gonna call the office.
I
I'm
got
gonna call Metro Atlanta and say Officer Fernandez. And they probably got more than one.
I got you.
That's all I'm saying.
All right, well, we're going to give you everything that's associated with this call.
Thank
Everyone's recording. There's no question about what happened.
After the officers provided Mr. Kugler with their names and badge numbers, as well as the case number, their interaction ended without any further incident. When asked about the encounter, Mr. Kugler later told TMZ that, quote, "This situation should never have happened. However, Bank of America worked with me and addressed it to my satisfaction, and we've moved on." It is unclear whether Mr. Kugler intends to take any legal action against the police department or the officers involved. Overall, Sergeant Fernandez and the Atlanta officers get an A-,
yeah,
because
I was
although they
gonna
should
say
have
A.
released Mr. Kugler from handcuffs without him asking, they immediately complied with his request, remained respectful and professional throughout the encounter, and provided Mr. Kugler with their names, their badge numbers, and the case number. That being said, this grade is based solely on the officer's behavior after Mr. Kugler was detained, because I cannot evaluate their actions in detaining and handcuffing him without knowing the specific information about the 911 call they received from dispatch. However, during their interaction with Mr. Kugler, the officers did an excellent job of facilitating an open dialogue, addressing Mr. Kugler's concerns, and allowing him time to deal with his anxiety while expressing empathy and consideration for his reaction. And I would encourage other law enforcement officers to learn from
Fair enough.
these officers'
Yes.
communication style. Mr. Kugler gets an A+ for maintaining
Okay.
respectful demeanor under incredibly stressful circumstances, clearly explaining the situation to the officers, and advocating for his rights by requesting he be released from handcuffs and that the officers provide their names and badge numbers.
You kinda
When the
clap them, to be
officers
honest,
approached him in the
you know what
lobby,
I'm
Mr.
saying?
Kugler immediately complied with their commands and did not resist or physically escalate the encounter, even though he knew he had not violated the law. Instead, he remained calm and clarified the misunderstanding, and thereby was released from handcuffs after only a few minutes of detention. I commend Mr. Kugler for his patience during the interaction, as well as for following up with Bank of America about the situation upon learning the source of the 911 call. It is unclear why the teller and the manager thought it was appropriate to call 911 in this
Yeah, they were
situation,
weird.
but I hope
Just
that
weirdos.
Bank of America takes action as a result of this interaction to better train its employees on how to handle situations like this. Let us know if there is an interaction.
Yeah, that was just weird. That was just weird. I'm gonna turn this off because it's loud as fuck. What about the JCS? I think they got discontinued because YouTube is just kind of weird. YouTube are very, very selective when they do demonetization or whatever the fuck. And if they start biting on you, like, they don't, it doesn't stop, the bite doesn't stop. They kind of like latch on. That's kind of how it happened with JCS, I think. Where he got bit by, like, demonetization, which probably had like a manual review to it. And then you just can't get rid of the bite. That's just kind of how it is.